ale bolo, di daddy wililinyo, eh. Juguma saraye alabolo, juguma saraye alabolo, naninga jugu saraya alebolo, di daddy wililinyo, eh. Hey, hey, hey.
Fulbrighters and friends here in Washington and online around the world. Good evening and welcome to the 22nd Fulbright Prize Ceremony. Awarded by the Fulbright Association of the United States, the J. William Fulbright Prize celebrates the advancement of peace through international understanding, realizing the vision of Senator Fulbright and honoring the impact of the Fulbright program worldwide. For more than 30 years, the prize has been made possible through the Fulbright Prize Endowment, individual and institutional members of the Fulbright Association, and donors like you, including members of the 1946 Society. Please see the listings in your program. This year, the prize has enjoyed the generous support of the following sponsors and donors. Thank you. Please welcome the Executive Director of the Fulbright Association and Fulbright alumnus to India, Dr. John Bader.
Good evening. Indeed, it has been a very good evening. Thanks to so many, starting with our sponsors and donors whose generosity will power the programs both of the Fulbright Association, such as Fulbright in the Classroom, and water.org. Those sponsors include the Pennsylvania State University for supporting the reception we just enjoyed, the that's fine. The ADP Foundation and Fulbrighter Josh Weston. Many thanks to the Association's National Board of Directors, the Prize Selection Committee, my talented and very, very hardworking team, musical performers, everyone at the Marriott Marquis, and all of you for making this a special gathering of friends, alumni, and supporters of the Fulbright program. Thank you so much. Fulbright Prize laureates have advanced peace and reconciliation, combated disease, slowed the arms race, comforted refugees, promoted democracy, and alleviated poverty. Our laureates deserve our admiration, support, and celebration. We will spend this ceremony doing just that for Gary White and Matt Damon. We will better understand their work and its powerful, positive impact. But I want to spend my few minutes of welcome and reflection on the power of inspiration. First, to reflect on what inspired them, and then how they inspire us. This is less about what they have done then, and more about how we can encourage each other to be better stewards of all peoples and our shared planet. Gary and Matt began their work in India, where I went on a Fulbright grant after college. India is a country of great passions, an intensely complex subcontinent of many cultures, languages, philosophies, and histories. 4 world religions, Hinduism, Jainism, Buddhism, and Sikhism, were founded there. India's complex ecosystem includes the Thar Desert, the Himalayas, the Deccan Plateau, hill stations like Kodaikanal, and the tropics of Kerala. Wherever you are, especially in the rural areas that I traveled from Rajasthan to Madhya Pradesh, there is one unifying obsession: water. Finding and carrying potable water is a daily burden for women and girls in every village. Using water as effective irrigation is a common difficulty. Deforestation and industrial production threaten the water cycle and its cleanliness. Water is so important in India that it is sacred, with powers to relieve, restore, and forgive. There are few experiences worldwide that are as spiritually powerful as the rituals happening at this very moment on the banks of the Ganges. Fulbright alumni always say how transformational the experience was for them. I was blessed to be transformed by India, and so were Gary and Matt. Inspired by India and other travels to do the work we will learn about and celebrate this evening. In turn, they have inspired others, a multiplier effect that is familiar to Fulbrighters who build self-perpetuating networks across borders for a better world. Let me end my remarks on inspiration with a personal note. Gary, your commitment to water safety and sanitation reminds us of the centrality of water to all life on this glorious planet. You have developed an inspiring, novel approach to safe water and sanitation using the power of investors and capital to create sustainable, affordable water systems. Harnessing financial tools to make the world better is inspiring a new generation of financial professionals, like my son Calvin, who works for an ESG investment firm. Thank you for your vision and your determination, Gary. You are an inspiration to us all. Matt, like your friend and fellow Fulbright Prize laureate, Bono, you have leveraged your success to be one of the world's greatest advocates and philanthropists. Your work and generosity benefit not just water safety, but poverty and hunger relief, the fight against AIDS, and especially education, inspired by your mother, Nancy, an early education scholar, and therefore one of us. Your performance as astronaut Mark Watney, the Martian, is intelligent, funny, and passionate. My family has memorized every line in this flick, like this one. In the face of overwhelming odds, I'm left with only one option. I'm going to have to science the shit out of this. That included following the recipe for, yes, water. You have inspired my son Eli to major in physics at Yale, where he is an Air Force ROTC, and we thank you. I conclude with a charge to us all to draw inspiration from these laureates who have used their talents to promote international understanding and especially cooperation. I hope this evening is a source of new energy for you and yours to give, to get involved, to work hard, and to make this fragile world more beautiful than ever. Thank you all very, very much.
Please welcome Fulbright Scholar to Zimbabwe and Chair of the Board of Directors of the Fulbright Association, Dr. Robert Gervasi.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Seeing this video, every time I see it, I continue to be moved and humbled by the company we keep. And as I've talked to so many people who have done extraordinary things, they don't see themselves as extraordinary people. They see themselves as ordinary people who have been blessed with the ability to do extraordinary things. And that is one of the key reasons why Gary and Matt are here this evening. After a while, you do extraordinary things, and you do become extraordinary people, so take it with... You know, about 30 years ago, the United Nations named March 22nd of every successive year as the World Day of Water, an opportunity to focus the world's attention on exactly the kind of work that Gary and Matt have committed themselves to. And this year, on March 22nd, I remember it because it's my late mother's birthday. This year, their theme, every year there's a little snippet theme, and the theme this year is Water for Peace. And I thought, what a wonderful coincidence that we are honoring Gary and Matt during the year when the United Nations is inviting us to reflect on the intersection of those two commitments. That Senator Fulbright's vision of a world of peace and understanding has to go hand in hand with a vision of a world in which life's most basic and precious resource is available to all. I was also pleased to hear John speak about inspiration and the sacredness of water, because that was my experience in Zimbabwe as well. It could have been exactly the same words that he spoke in terms of being astonished by how much time women, and of course it's women, spend of their lives gathering water, usually for men and children. And what Gary and Matt are doing is not only helping people live the basics of life, but also be free to expand their own creativity as people, whatever their gender. And I struck also when I think about the fact, I should mention that when I was in Zimbabwe, I taught at the University of Zimbabwe in the Department of Religious Studies, Classics, and Philosophy. Yes, they teach classics at the University of Zimbabwe, and they don't do that in very many places anymore in the United States, go figure. But I was thinking about the fact that all of the great world religions do have this sense of the sacredness of water. The Hebrew scriptures, the Christian scriptures, the Quran, all speak about water as being one of the deepest, if not the deepest expressions of the love of divinity for the world and for humanity. And I was thinking also, as a classicist, that this is not just a religious observation and commitment, but it also was the start of Western philosophy. According to Aristotle, the founder of philosophy in Greece was not Socrates, but over a century before Socrates, a man named Thales of Miletus. Thales was the first of what are called the pre-Socratic philosophers. These were people who tried to understand the world in terms other than the traditional stories of mythology, Zeus and Hera and their friends. And what Thales came up with from his experience and observation and examination was he hypothesized that everything in the world was ultimately founded on a substratum of water, that everything is water. And as a student, of course, we dismissed that because he didn't know anything about splitting atoms yet. But actually, in retrospect, That was pretty astute for 6th century BC. And I was thinking about this, and then last night, as I was hoping to get a good night's sleep before this momentous event, I had a dream. And in that dream, Thales stood before me, speaking to me. True story, true story. And he said, "Are you Robert Gervasi?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I know you're in this Fulbright thing." And he said, "And I think that what these two gentlemen have done is fantastic. We need a lot more people doing this. We need a lot more people understanding that water is everything." The problem is people don't realize that we started thinking about this stuff 2,600 years ago. And we need to get back to our roots and realize that we're all in this together. We've been in this together from ancient Greece to today, to modern America. So you suggest that everybody in the room see the documentary that Mr. Damon did a few years ago about the water problem. Probably didn't get as wide attention as possible. And he went further and said, these two gentlemen also know how to speak to audiences, and one of them produces and acts. And, wouldn't it be great if he took a page out of his first experience in cinema, Mystic Pizza? What we need is a rom-com called Mystic Water. Maybe even Mystic Thales, to help people go back and study ancient Greek philosophy. So you might put it out there, but even if they don't bite, at least tell them they're doing a great job and we have to keep this water train going. That's not me, that's Thales, true story. So with that, now it is my pleasure to offer you our Fulbright Prize Honor Roll, introducing our friends and partners in government here and around the world. I will do this in several waves and will lead the applause each time. First, we are honored to be joined by members of the House of Representatives, and we have two with us right now, Congressman John Sarbanes of Maryland, who is a Fulbright alumnus to Greece. And Congressman Mark Takano of California. We are so grateful. Please stand. We are so grateful for your presence and your steadfast support of the Fulbright program. I especially want to thank our fellow Fulbrighter, John Sarbanes, who will be retiring after 18 years of exceptional service to our country and the world. The administration is well represented here by three groups of people, and I ask that they stand. And hold your applause until they all stand. Members of the presidentially appointed Fulbright Foreign Scholarship Board. Please stand. Our colleagues from the State Department's Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, and our friends at USAID. The Fulbright program succeeds through partnerships with 49 commission countries and over 100 embassy posts. We are delighted to welcome our diplomat colleagues from these countries and those who work with water.org. First, let me introduce the ambassadors, and I ask that they stand, and I ask again that you hold your applause until they all are standing. This happens at college commencements too, right? And so I will introduce them in the alphabetical order of their countries. Ambassador Schneebauer of Austria, Ambassador Nason of Ireland, Ambassador Moctezuma Barragan of Mexico, Ambassador Amrani of Morocco, Ambassador Majorowski of Poland, Ambassador Duarte Lopez of Portugal, Ambassador Muraru of Romania, Ambassador Javorčík of the Slovak Republic, Ambassador Duran of Uruguay, who is a fellow Fulbrighter, and Ambassador Kanza of Tanzania. Please stay standing as we also recognize the Charge d'Affaires and Deputy Chiefs of Missions from the following countries who have joined us this evening. And I ask that they stand as well. Chile, Egypt, Greece, Hungary, Indonesia, Tekro, and Thailand. You may be seated. We are also delighted to be joined by counselors and representatives of other Fulbright Commission countries, and I ask that you stand. The countries of Argentina, Czech Republic, France, Germany, Luxembourg, Pakistan, Peru, South Korea, Spain, and Turkey. You may be seated. Finally, we are honored that our 2012 prize laureate, Doctors Without Borders, is represented here by Casey Saunders and Nejma Banks. Please stand. Doctors Without Borders continues to serve the world with exceptional humanity and courage in some of the most challenging and dangerous places on earth. Join me again in thanking them and their colleagues in serving us all. Last but not least, and they weren't expecting this, I have to thank, there are so many VIPs in the room here, but I have to say that there's just no way around the fact that, for me personally, the VIPs that I want you to at least see and acknowledge are my good friend and mentor and colleague, Dr. Donna Carroll, who is please stand for a moment, the Executive Director of the Association of Catholic Colleges and Universities, my daughter, Sarah Ross, and her husband, Colin Ross, and my ever-loving wife, Jennifer Gervasi. I will hear about that later. Give me a break. So thank you all for joining us this evening for this great celebration. Senator Fulbright would be very proud, and so would Thales. Thank you.
Water.org began its work in India. To honor South Asia's cultural heritage, please welcome to the stage the Indian dance group G.W. Jawani of Georgetown University, a longtime institutional member of the Fulbright Association.
Still bangles.
ਮੈਂ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਟੀਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਨੀ ਹੱਥ ਜਿੱਡਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਏ ਮੋਚਰ ਟੰਗਿਆ ਨੀ ਬੈਗ ਜੀਨਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਨੀ ਨਵੀਂ ਜਿਹੀ ਮੰਡੀਰ ਉੱਠੀ ਤੇਰੇ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ ਦੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਨਾਮ ਜੱਟ ਦਾ ਤੂੰ ਸੁਣਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੋਣਾ ਦੇਖਿਆ ਨੀ ਹੋਣਾ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸੀਨਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਨੀ ਆਹ ਜਦੋਂ ਕਿਤੇ ਨਿਕਲੇ ਹੋ ਬਾਹਰ ਹੁੰਦਿਆਂ ਨੀ ਉਦੋਂ ਕਾਲ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਨੀ ਮੈਂ ਤਿੰਨ ਚਾਰ ਤੇ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੋਲੀ ਵਾਲਾ ਸੱਪ ਛਪਿਆ ਨੀ ਮਿੱਤਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਾਰ ਤੇ ਆਹ ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੋਲੀ ਵਾਲਾ ਸੱਪ ਛਪਿਆ ਨੀ ਮਿੱਤਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਾਰ ਤੇ
बुलावे तुझे यार आज मेरी गलियां बसाऊं तेरे संग मैं अलग दुनिया बुलावे तुझे यार आज मेरी गलियां बसाऊं तेरे संग मैं अलग दुनिया ना आए कभी दोनों में जरा भी फासले बस एक तू हो एक मैं हूँ और कोई ना है मेरा सब कुछ तेरा तू समझ ले तू चाहे मेरे हक की जमीन रख ले तू सांसों पे भी नाम तेरा लिख दे मैं जीऊं जब जब तेरा दिल धड़के
For some people, getting water is as easy as turning on the faucet. But for millions of others, it is a daily struggle that dominates their lives. This is the global water crisis, and it is the most urgent social challenge of our time. I'm Matt Damon, co-founder of Water.org and Water Equity. We've made it our mission to empower people in need with sustainable access to safe water and sanitation at home. We can't solve other global challenges without investing in water. Water is the best investment the world can make to empower women, fight climate change, improve health, and end poverty. Right now, millions of people are paying high prices for water from vendors or collecting water from unsafe natural sources. Both options cost families in time, money, opportunities, and health. What if they didn't have to? What if they could get access to the funds needed to give their families a long-term safe water solution at home and a private place to go? They can. Water.org breaks down the financial barriers between people living in poverty and the safe water and toilet they need to survive and thrive. Our solutions are smart, simple, and sustainable. We work with our in-country financial partners to add loans for water and sanitation solutions to their portfolios. These partners then mobilize funds from capital markets to provide affordable loans to people in need of water. People living in poverty use these loans for solutions such as taps, toilets, storage tanks, or piped connections in their homes. Repaid loans create the opportunity for another family to finance the solutions they need, fast and affordably. This solution is scalable. It changes more lives, faster, and more efficiently. Millions stand ready to change their families' lives through this proven, powerful approach. And you can make it happen. Now is the time to invest in water. For people, for progress, and for possibility. The future of families around the world depends on it. Join us to ensure water and sanitation for all.
To introduce our laureates, please welcome to the stage Lynn Taliento, board member of Water.org and senior advisor at McKinsey & Company.
When I first met Gary, I don't think I ever expected I would be here on this stage talking to you all. And I'm going to tell you how I met him because I think it might say a little bit about why we're all here tonight. So I get a phone call in my office at McKinsey, a cold call, just ring, ring, transfer, Lynn, hello. Doesn't usually happen, right? Someone makes an appointment and, hey, it's Gary White, blah, blah, blah. Would you, he talks to me about Water.org, said, would you ever consider joining our board? What? I don't know you, I don't know what Water.org is. I said, I can't join boards because I was leading McKinsey's social sector practice at the time, which meant I served tens of nonprofits every year. I couldn't sit on a board, I'd be conflicted, and I said, I just can't. And he said, well, so he quickly changed tack, and he said, well, what if you just join us for a little strategy session, just a very short session in New York, and you could just come give us some ideas. By the end of the call, not only had I agreed to go to that, but I had agreed to host it in the McKinsey offices, right? So I'm like, I'm getting a sense of how this guy works. Midwestern, nice guy, smart, and suddenly I'm in New York in a meeting that I'm hosting now in the offices. Okay, great, super. So we sit down, we start talking about whatever it is Water.org is. I had no idea. And it turns out that they had just discovered this idea of water credit, which I think it was explained, but the idea is instead of digging wells, which is what we'd been doing, I can say we now, which is, we called it direct service. We'd dig a well and we'd get the community to manage it. We had discovered water credit, which means we could just use a little bit of philanthropic capital to then get institutions to make loans to women, mostly women, so that they could get access to water. So we didn't have to pay for the whole well. I'm going, oh, that's interesting. This is pretty smart stuff. And I'm kind of trying to understand it. And I'm getting pretty much schooled on philanthropic capital costs, finance costs from none other than Matt Damon. And I'm like, I'm looking at the guy. He comes in, by the way, to the meeting, you know, cap on, like no security, just chill, sitting in the corner. And he starts telling me about finance, about like philanthropic costs and leverage and how we could do this. And I'm hearing, remember the line in Good Will Hunting where he sort of, you know, tells off the guy in the bar and the kid goes, yeah, my boy's wicked smart. I'm like, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, this boy is wicked smart. Okay, fine, he's wicked smart. So we're sitting there, and then we're talking about, okay, wow, we've got this great idea. We can reach millions of people. I'm going, okay, I buy that, millions of people. And I turn to Gary, and I say, what's our budget right now? What's our annual budget right now? And he goes, $7 million. Millions of people we're going to reach with $7 million. I'm like, so not only are these guys wicked smart, they're wildly aspirational, potentially delusional, right? And my second thought was, these are my people. These are my people. So I was completely caught up in what they were doing, joined the board, and since then we have reached more than 60 million people. Yes. So how did we do that? I think there are three things about both Matt and Gary that are very special. And the first one is this sort of relentless commitment. They will go anywhere and do anything to make the work happen, to convince you that the work matters, right? There is no stopping these guys. They'll do it without us. They literally will do it. Gary tried to do it alone for a while, found Matt. Now the two of them will literally do anything. I have never experienced this kind of deep commitment, so steadfast. They will not stop. I will say Matt also will do anything to try to tell you. They will tell you anything about the water crisis. How can you commit? He's done a toilet strike. He's convinced some of the biggest brands in the world to support us, Stella, Bank of America. And then, you know, rather than say, oh, we're going to fix the website, we're going to work on marketing, they actually wrote a book. They wrote a whole book about the work that we're doing. It's called The Worth of Water. How many people do you know with that level of commitment would actually take the time to tell the complete story of this work and do the hard work of writing a book to let you know what it is that we're doing and how important it is? So please get on the bus, because they're not going to stop. They will keep telling you this and trying to convince you of this, so please join us, because they are not ever going to give up. The second thing about them that I think is really special is what I call humble genius. They are wicked smart. I mean, Gary has 3 engineering degrees. Matt was at Harvard before he became a famous actor. He's also an actor, a writer, a producer, a director. He does it all, right? So very, very intelligent, genius folks. But they never believe they have the answer, ever. They never believe they have the answer. They just keep asking questions. Curiosity, they go, they push. They listen to the women that we serve. That's how they figured out water credit, right? You're not just digging wells. They're like, wait a minute, these women are already paying for water. We could give them a loan. That's how they solved it. But did they stop there? No. They're like, wait a minute. These institutions that are making loans need cheaper capital. Well, let's start an asset management organization. So then they created a new organization. Oh, great. Did they stop there? You think you could stop there, right? You've invented water credit. You've got an asset management organization to give them more capital. No. 2 weeks ago at our board meeting, we created yet another organization. Because guess what? If you want to invest in projects in the countries that we care about to actually improve the situation of water and sanitation, those projects aren't readily available. They're not ready to be invested in. So guess what we're doing? We're creating a project management organization called Water Connect. They continue to innovate, new idea after new idea after new. And it is not just Gary. These two, if you hear them talk, it's insane. They connect and spin up, and they listen and feel what they're seeing, and they come up with new ideas. So I think that kind of genius is incredibly special. The third thing is the one that I think is the most important, which is what I would call love. It's community. They know what matters most. I think it's rare to find 2 people who actually do know what matters most, which is relationships and community, and that we're all in this together. I think their moms taught them that. I think they exhibit that in everything they do. They care about the women that we work with. They see them as agents of their own destinies. They don't see them as people to help who are over there. They care so much. They also live their lives with integrity. That belief in relationships and that faith in community, they live their lives fully that way every day, which is why Matt's like the most boring movie star in the world. The paparazzi have given up. They've just given up. They don't even follow him around anymore because he's living his life with integrity. And Gary, you know, we're not sure what you do on your long walks through the mountain, but we're sure it's probably not worthy of paparazzi covering you. But I do think that having two individuals who are that soulful, that caring, and that living their lives with that level of integrity means that we are able to attract. Some of you are partners in this room. You know that, you see the trust, you see the way that they operate and the way that they work together. And I will close by saying that the two of them together have built, I think, one of the most extraordinary partnerships I've ever seen. It's powerful, it's genius, right? It's relentless. They will come for you, and you will be part of this at some point, right? They will not stop. But they love each other. And I think when you are privileged to be around two extraordinary people who also love each other and love the work, it's a real gift. So with that, I'd like to welcome you up on stage to receive your honor.
So much, Lynn. That was so sweet. Thank you. You are amazing. Thank you so much.
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. This is incredibly humbling. I just had a flash. This felt like the end of Star Wars, where they get to... This is what an honor to receive this, and it's incredibly humbling. And we're acutely aware of the really prestigious group that's gone before us. Everyone from Nelson Mandela and Jimmy Carter to Václav Havel to Cory Aquino, it just goes on. And those people will really continue to inspire us. I think, you know, for us, our great hope is that this is such a wonderful and prestigious thing, and hopefully it can operate as a signal effect to donors large and small, that we're actually a good place to either donate or invest, which you'll hear more about. We didn't want to do a long speech. We're going to do a discussion instead, because it's a little easier for everybody. So you'll hear from us about all that in a little bit. But this is just incredibly humbling, and we're very grateful. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, it is humbling. I think, you know, Lynn and John and Robert. I mean, yeah, and Thales, yeah, standing in. Just the way you spoke about water and what we're doing, it's so humbling to have such you know, articulate, passionate people talking about what we do, and it is very humbling. It's this award for human understanding. I think that there's nothing that I've seen that's more core, that crosses understanding across all cultures and all people, is water. You know, we live in different places, we practice different religions, we eat different foods, we speak different languages, but today everybody did one thing together as a planet. They took a drink of water. And to have that bind us together as humanity and that understanding that can cross, hopefully, you know, we're a small part of that. And this is a great step for us in continuing the journey that Lynn has definitely appointed us to carry on. And we're grateful for that. And I also would be remiss if I didn't mention some of the donors and investors that we have here, the Bezos Earth Fund, Amazon, Xylem, the Development Finance Corporation, who have believed in this work and supported it, and the Water.org and water equity teams that are here, and past and present board members, Jill Nash, Andy Sarian, Paul O'Connell, and Lynn Taliento, who did relent and join the board. So again, thank you, and we look forward to the dialogue we're going to have with Melissa Block now, if we can find Melissa.
All right.
Joining Gary and Matt on stage for a conversation is Melissa Block, NPR journalist, Fulbrighter to Switzerland, and recipient of the Fulbright Association's Lifetime Achievement Award. Please welcome Melissa Block.
All right. Thanks, Melissa. Are you here?
I'm here.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all. And I'm so excited to get to talk to these two gentlemen about their work, and congratulations on this incredible honor. I was thinking this morning when I turned on the tap and drew a glass of water, it's something that many of us just take for granted until there's a drought or a crisis like Flint, Michigan, or Jackson, Mississippi. But it's obviously nothing that you two take for granted. So why don't you talk just a little bit, Gary? Why don't you start about how water became the driving passion of your life?
Well, for me, I was drawn to engineering, as it's been mentioned, and felt, kind of like a techie and wanted to move in that direction. But I also had people in my life instill this sense of, social justice, and my parents, teachers. And so when I was studying engineering and looking at, what might be the intersection between engineering and social justice, I was studying aerospace engineering at the time. And then I switched my degree to civil engineering, because I felt like that was, learning about this problem, billions of people without access to water and sanitation, and that's what drew me to it. And it was a, fairly simplistic decision then. As the story unfolds, you'll recognize this is much less about physical engineering in pipes, although that's part of it. It's really about financial engineering. And so I had to kind of get reschooled in financial engineering as this is unfolded. And that possibility of, bringing my life and intersecting with this crisis is all I've ever done since, and been very fortunate.
Yeah, and teaming up with Matt. Matt, same question about when water became such a focus of interest for you.
Well, I was looking at all these issues of extreme poverty, and I was just shocked by how water really undergirded everything. And growing up in the West, I just didn't really know about it. And I think that's actually the first kind of hurdle that we have to clear when we talk about this with people, because it's so hard to relate to if you're from say America or somewhere here in the West. We've never really been thirsty. We're never really too far from a clean drink of water. It's in such abundance around us. Yeah. That when you see people raising money for different things, if they're if it's AIDS or cancer, that's much more relatable. One of us would have a family member who's affected by that, or a friend who's affected by those things. Water, it's very hard unless you travel a lot or you're in the third world a lot to really understand what it's like to be affected by it. So that's the very first thing, and that was the kind of an epiphany for me. It was going on a water collection with a young girl in Zambia, and really connecting with her and really relating to her, because the way she spoke about where her life was. I was waiting for her when she came home from school, and we walked a mile together to this well, and listening to her talk about what her life, she was going to move to Lusaka, she was going to become a nurse. She had these dreams, and it reminded me of Ben Affleck and me when we were kids, going, we're going to move to New York, we're going to move to the big city, we're going to be actors. And that's exactly what kids should be doing at that age. They should have this kind of this hope and possibility kind of arrayed out in front of them. And it wasn't until I was leaving that I realized, wow, had someone not had the foresight to sink a bore well near this kid's home, she would not be in school. She would be spending her entire life really looking for water, you know, and what does that do to the outcomes, and what does that do to, you know, rather than contributing to the economic engine of her country and living out her dream of being a nurse, she's just stuck in this cycle. Yeah. And so there were a number of issues. There was the absolutely senseless death. You know, this year 400,000 kids will die of something completely preventable. You know, things that might keep our kids out of school for a couple days.
Waterborne diseases.
Waterborne diseases, yeah. For which the you know, if your kid has diarrhea, the best thing is water. You know, it's is to rehydrate them. So so this goes on and on year after year, and so there's that issue, which is this just injustice and this unnecessary suffering, and then there's just the opportunity cost of like what somebody's potential in life is, and all of this unrealized potential that's so tragic, and this is an issue that's solvable. We solved it here for ourselves 100 years ago.
Yeah. I wonder if you could tell us a story and explain through the experience maybe of one of the women that we've seen in the slideshow that we've been watching, of how your model works, because it's not, as Lynn talked about, it's not a matter of going and we're going to gift you a well. Why don't you tell us the story of maybe just one person whom your organization has
Can I brag about Gary first,
Please.
Really quickly? So Gary, when we partnered together 15 years ago, Gary had this incredible insight and had come up with this innovation, which was basically to, as you heard about in the video a little bit, and Lynn talked about, it was to kind of repurpose the ideas of microfinance that Muhammad Yunus pioneered, but apply them to water. And that was a big thought leap for the microfinance institutions at the time, because it wasn't seen as an income generating loan. Normally the way that worked at the Grameen Bank was they'd give you money, you'd say buy a sewing machine with the money, then you could use the sewing machine to work as a tailor, and then you could make the money back and pay off the loan, and that made sense to the bankers. Well, Gary, from spending his adult life in these communities, realized that people were paying for water already. In the poorest communities, they pay more than the middle class and the upper class, because they're not connected to the infrastructure. And so they're spending a lot of time or going foraging for water or buying it from water vendors. The water is unreliable, it's dirty, it can make them sick, and it's more expensive. And so realizing that, Gary said, well, what if we could front the money for a loan and connect people to existing infrastructure? They should be able to pay the loan back because you're buying all of this time back, and it will give them more time to work at a job and pay off the loan. And this was a major thought leap for the microfinance institutions at the time. And in retrospect, it was a brilliant, very simple but very brilliant idea. And our loans, what we call water credit, they pay off at above 98%. And 90% of our borrowers are women, and they're among the most vulnerable women in the world. And that's the real success story for us. Is it's these women. We've done over 14 million loans and reached 66 million people at this point. Again and again, these women are paying off these loans. It's basically, we just needed to nudge the market towards them and get out of the way and let them solve their own problem. And people do not take out loans for things that they don't want. And so the solutions, what we run into a lot is after 5 years, half the water projects around the world tend to fail. It's because they're kind of gifted to communities with a kind of paternalistic, charitable kind of bent where it's, here's your solution, you're welcome, goodbye. And versus organically growing out of the needs of the community. And so it was an ingenious idea. So sorry to sidetrack everybody. I just needed to brag about Gary because it's worked out.
It's never happened before.
But it's worked out as well as we could have hoped. What Gary saw, all those years ago, almost 2 decades ago, has really come to pass. And the real story there is these women who, one after another, are repaying these loans. And what that means is it drives the philanthropic cost of capital per person reach down. So a well system would be $25 to give somebody clean water for life, whereas these we're down below $5 per person reached because the money keeps getting recycled and going
This
out.
is really interesting. I never thought you were going to be the wonk, and now I'm going to tell a story.
Yeah, I was asking for a story then.
This is a nice role reversal.
As they say in the South, I was just trying to brag on you.
I want to get to Gary's story in one second, but Matt, you were skeptical at first, right, that this model would work. In your book, you talk about that you doubted that this model was viable.
I recoiled at first at the idea that we were going to have the poorest people in the world paying.
Yeah.
And
because it's counterintuitive.
Because it's
right?
counterintuitive, and so I pushed back, and that was when Gary just we went to some of these places. He said, they're already paying. And here's what you're really going to do is unleash their potential by getting them out of this death loop of poverty where they have no savings, so they're paying everything they have in their pocket every day. And if you break that cycle, and that's what, once the loan gets paid off, they not only have their time back, but they're relieved of that need to pay. And maybe you can talk about some of the like the person we met who. When you look at actually the percentage of their income they were paying.
Right. Yeah, talk about that, Gary. And maybe, if there is a woman who comes to mind whose story still sort of resonates in your brain.
Well, for sure. But I think, the other realization at the same time that we're discovering how women cope, and these are coping costs that they pay. In terms of their health, in terms of lack of education for their girls, in terms of their lost time, their cash. These are all these amazing coping costs that are astronomical.
If they don't have access
if they don't
to water.
have
If they have
access
to
to water,
walk for
right? So they're trying to figure this out, and they're paying huge amounts, sometimes 25% of their income. But we also realized that there was never going to be enough charity in the world to solve this problem. It just, the math didn't even come close to working. It's orders of magnitude less than what's needed, the trillions that's needed. So it's like, how do we do this in a new way that we can tap into the potential of capital from the bottom up and top down? And so just, I'll do two quick stories because they illustrate this in different ways. Okay. One was with Lynn Taliento was her name. She was in the Philippines and living in a slum. She was paying about $2 a day to one of these water vendors because she's in the middle of the slum. There are no streams that you could even think about drinking from. So $60 a month. She took out a loan from one of our local financial partners. It was less than $400. She was paying back about $5 a month for that loan for 2 years. And her water bill was now $5 a month. So she was putting $50 back into her pocket every month. And that's like this whole concept of getting financial institutions to suspend disbelief that these people will pay back these loans. It's like right there is the math, right? And so this was after we were many years into it. But that's why it can work. And that's why it's not, usurious. It's not like trying to squeeze money out of people to pay for water because they're already paying for water. The other one was in Uganda, and this woman, she was a grandmother. Her name was Mama Florence. That was the only name that she would give us, is Mama Florence. And she would get on her bike and pedal around to find water every day and bring it back, spending hours doing this. She took out a loan from one of our local financial partners, and we have about 140 of these financial partners around the world now that do this in partnership with us. Again, a few $100s. She put in a very simple pump and a well, and now she had water for her children and her grandchildren. But she didn't stop there, right? She then used the water to grow some vegetables, and then kind of the waste from the vegetables she was then feeding to some pigs she started to raise and was selling those. Then she recognized that she had this clay soil where she could make bricks with the water. So she started making bricks and selling those. Then she recognized that if I build some rooms on my property, I could probably rent those out and make some more income. And now she's making enough to send her kids to school. Mama Florence. That just, nothing ever starts without water being the foundation. And Thales was right, This woman, it was water that set all this entrepreneurial potential into motion that would have lied dormant. She would have been on her bicycle today still, just trying to cope with this. And that's why the model can work, because people value water so much. They have they're spending hours one day, and the next day they have a tap in their house. And the women I remember we met in India on our trips there, We were there the first day that she had this tap to open. She had put flowers around this tap.
Wow.
She was burning incense. She had on her best sari. And it was almost like a deity to her that she now had water, that she could turn on the faucet. That's overnight value creation. That's why these loans can get repaid. If you're spending $60 one day and the next day 10, it's not that genius at the end. It's just math, right? So.
You know, we're talking a lot about women, and all the images that we've been seeing in the slideshow are of women. And there's a line in your book, you're quoting a UN official, saying that a woman's body becomes part of the water delivery infrastructure doing the work of pipes, which is such a vivid image that this woman's whole existence is basically a part of a network, part of doing the job that pipes should be doing. And you must see that over and over again.
Yeah, it's, you know, the physical labor of that, you know, moving, you know, 40, 50 pounds of water, sometimes multiple times a day. It really is. It's literally backbreaking. And again, it's just one more factor that makes it so important and so valuable when people can get access in a much more reasonable way. But yeah, there's no reason humanity and women should be the water infrastructure when we know how to do it.
And part of the idea there is that this is also a path toward some sort of gender equity, at least getting partway there.
Absolutely. I mean, it disproportionately affects women and girls. They're usually the ones who do, you know, are the human infrastructure, and it, you know, it means girls aren't in school, you know, because they're tasked with helping the family survive to the next day, which means getting the water, and so obviously that just perpetuates this terrible cycle.
Gary, you said early on, I think, in this joint project of yours that your goal was to solve the water crisis in our lifetime. That's a really lofty goal.
The first time we ever said that was in front of Lynn Taliento.
And then I think maybe all of our revenue to date was $7 million. Maybe not our annual revenue.
Well,
maybe I spun that differently.
But when you think of that goal and you think of the numbers of people who still have no access to safe water, no access to sanitation, what keeps you optimistic that that is doable, that that is actually a realistic goal for a lifetime?
Well, I mean, we're accelerating, for one. You know, we reached our first 1 million people in 2012, and you know, now we're reaching a few million every quarter. You know, you know, we know that this solution can reach about 500 million people, and there are other innovations coming, and we feel like there's going to be a tipping point where it's really about. I mean, we know how to do this. It's really about. I mean, getting out. It's things like this. It's forums like this where we can spread the word, and it's having the success that we've had that tends to really get people engaged, and we feel that we'll hit a tipping point, you know, and keep accelerating. It's our crazy mission statement, but you know, we are here to put ourselves out of business.
Yeah.
Gary?
Well, I think, you know, what gives me hope is that we have this incredible organization or organizations now with people thinking about this, our team, our board all the time about what is the next entrepreneurial innovation. And that's huge. And I think for me, it was, you know, being true to that mission, that vision. You know, maybe it's the engineer in me, but like when you look at the trajectory you're on relative to the problem that you're trying to solve, and it's clear you're not going to solve it. You can either stick your head in the sand and keep drilling wells, or you can, like, you know, engineer your way out of it. And so to me, that's what we did. And, you know, if we'd kept doing things the way we were doing, it would have taken us over 500 years to reach the same number of people that we've reached now. And what's important, and, you know, for me, why I have the greatest hopes is because we have now been able to create, you know, what I call the financial plumbing that can move capital from investors in the US and Europe who can invest in the water equity funds. We target competitive financial returns. So this is people who invest like the Development Finance Corporation and many others, to seek a return, a financial return. And then we use that capital to deliver it to those financial partners around the world who break it into millions of microloans, and that reaches the women like Lynn Taliento and Mama Florence. So we have created the financial plumbing that can connect the global capital markets to women making a few dollars a day. The capital markets, once we get them to suspend their disbelief that this can really work, which we're gaining on that, then the capital pool is theoretically more than enough to be able to reach everybody that this solution will work for. As Matt said, it's a lot of people. But we also know there's some people who are so poor, it's not going to work. But what if? Right now we're treating everybody in the world who doesn't have water equally in terms of their level of poverty. That just doesn't make any sense. Right. Everybody, there's gradations of poverty. If this solution can work for the lion's share of people who lack this, and then that frees up government subsidies, government capital to come in for some of the poorest in the world, then I think we can get line of sight on living that vision.
That was my question, are there places that are just too remote, too poor for the model that you have to work?
Yes, yeah, for sure. There's never one size fits all with anything, and we recognize that, and that's why it isn't all hands on deck. There needs to be the type of work that governments are doing. There needs to be cross subsidies and water tariffs so people in extreme poverty get the first few cubic meters of water for free or low cost, so that others who are using more water pay more per unit. And it's just trying to read that there's so much capital. We did this initiative with the World Economic Forum to look at these coping costs that I was talking about. The coping cost for people, because they don't have access to water, because of the health issues, because of the time, because of the money, it's about $300 billion a year. Globally. And if over 10 years, that's more than enough if you can just move the capital through the pipelines in a different way and alleviate those coping costs and move it to more efficient solutions, then these are the things that give us hope.
Yeah. Are there as you've gotten more successful and as the word has spread, are you still finding skeptics? Are you still having to do a hard sell? Are you still having to turn to Matt Damon for the...
No, it's interesting. President Clinton, who's a former recipient of this and has been a real cheerleader of ours for a long time now, he came to our event in 2012 when we reached our first 1 million people. And he looked at what we were doing, he looked at the model, and he immediately recognized it was going to work. And he pulled us aside and he said, "You just run those numbers up, you run them up." And, so we thought, well, when we hit 5 million, that's going to be a tipping point. When we hit 10 million, and so we've hit these benchmarks, and we're 50 million, that's for sure going to be it. And now we're at 66 million, and it'll be 70 million by the end of the year. Yeah, thanks. And we definitely feel like we're gaining momentum. And I think we were just talking earlier today about maybe it's something that we'll look back on and we'll be able to see more clearly when the inflection point was, like when it. But right now it just feels like the same. We're on the merry-go-round and we're at Davos and and we're walking into every meeting with our hat in our hands and trying to explain what we do, and sometimes meeting incredible partners, some of whom are here tonight, and sometimes, watching, just timing, at what point during the meeting did the eyes glaze over?
Yeah, then you just pull out your Bill Clinton imitation
right,
and you get him right back on track.
To bring him back. Are you listening to me at all? Yeah. So there are those frustrations, but what it really feels like is a very big mountain, and every day is another step. And today is a huge step. This is a really huge and prestigious honor that is going to, hopefully be that signal effect, yet another signal effect that we need that'll help us, expand the work.
I want to end by asking you, Gary, to relate a story that you tell in your book about a drive you took with your dad toward the end of his life, and something that you didn't know about him and how he grew up. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, I forgot about that story being in there. This was over 10 years ago, and my dad, was in the final stages of cancer, and in Kansas City, where I grew up and where he grew up. And we rented a van. You know, there's 5 of us kids and, you know, our families and things. Big van, and just drove around Kansas City and had him kind of narrate his life in different places where he lived when he was growing up. And we got to one point, and the houses in this area weren't there anymore, but he's like, yeah, that's where there was a house that we rented. And I said, I didn't know that, you know, and he's like, yeah, we had an outhouse in the back of the house where we would, you know, defecate, would use the toilet. And he said, and then the city came along and put in plumbing and sanitation. And because of that, they had to raise the rent and they had to move out.
They couldn't afford
They
it.
couldn't afford the rent anymore because of that. So it just struck me that, you know, only one generation away from, you know, not having access to sanitation for my father and me, you know, taking on this work, and it really struck me. Obviously, it must have struck you too.
Yeah, it did.
It was
and I'm sure he would be really proud to know how
Thanks.
far
Thanks.
your life has taken you as well. I think we should all raise a glass of good DC water to toast our honorees, Matt Damon and Gary White, water.org. Thank you both so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Are we doing Q&A? Is it a Q&A?
Thank you.
Congratulations to Fulbright Prize laureates Gary White and Matt Damon. Thank you for attending in Washington and online, and to Fulbright Association sponsors, donors, and members for their support. We're grateful to the Marriott Marquis, Washington, D.C. for hosting this event, and to all their wonderful staff. For more on the Fulbright Association and the Fulbright Prize, please visit Fulbright.org. When you have your next drink of clean water, be grateful to everyone who made that possible. Good night, stay healthy, and take care.